The twin suns of Xyrella cast golden light over the Great War Arena. It was the largest structure in the capital city, built of black stone and steel, with high towers that reached for the sky. Inside, thousands of alien spectators filled the stands, their voices echoing in a thunderous roar. They had gathered for a special event, the annual Champions Duel, where the strongest warriors proved their might before the Empire. At the center of the arena stood Princess Sarika of House, Vera. She was no ordinary princess. She was tall, strong, and feared across the galaxy. Her people, the Xyrellans, were a proud warrior race. Sarika had defeated every challenger who dared to face her. Men and women of her own kind, soldiers from rival worlds, even mercenaries, with advanced weapons. Not one had ever brought her to her knees. The air was tense as she looked around the arena. Her armor gleamed silver and blue, decorated with marks of her victories. Her spear rested easily in her hand, as if it were part of her own body. The crowd shouted her name, waving banners with her crest. She had already won 3 duels that day, and the audience wanted more. With a confident smile, Sarika raised her voice so that all could hear. "Is there no one left who can challenge me? No warrior with courage enough to face me?" The crowd cheered louder. She paced across the sand floor, her spear tapping against her shoulder. "Very well," she continued, her tone turning playful. "Let it be known, I will marry any human who can defeat me." The words sent a wave of laughter through the crowd. The Xyrellans thought of humans as soft, weak creatures, fragile compared to their own kind. Many saw humans only as traders, scholars or diplomats, not fighters. A human beating the undefeated Sarika was as likely as snow falling in the burning deserts. Up in the stands, warriors chuckled, nobles whispered, and even the arena announcer laughed. It was meant as a joke, a teasing challenge that no one would take seriously. But the laughter stopped when a single figure rose from the shadows near the challenger's gate. He was human. He wore no ornate armor, only a plain combat suit marked with the seal of the Terran Defense Corps. His hair was dark, his face calm, his posture relaxed, almost too relaxed for a man walking into danger. A long combat staff rested on his shoulder, simple in design but well worn, the kind of weapon that had seen many battles. The announcer hesitated, unsure if this was some sort of mistake. The man's voice carried clearly as he spoke. "I accept your challenge." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some shouted for him to leave before he embarrassed himself. Others leaned forward, curious to see how quickly he would fall. Sarika tilted her head, studying him. "You are human?" she asked, her tone half amusement, half curiosity. "I am," he replied. "Captain Adrian Cole, Terran Defense Corps." The princess's eyes narrowed slightly. Most humans she had met carried themselves with a hint of fear in her presence. This one did not. He stood there as if the arena was just another place to walk through, as if the weight of thousands of watching eyes did not touch him. "Do you know what you are agreeing to?" she asked, her voice sharper now. "This is no sparring match. I fight to win." "So do I," Adrian said simply. A murmur spread among the spectators. His words were calm, but there was something in his voice, a quiet certainty that made even the loudest hecklers fall silent. Sarika turned away, lifting her spear again. "Very well, human. Tomorrow at first sun, we will fight. I hope you last longer than the others." Adrian nodded once, then left the arena without another word. His steps were steady, unhurried. It was as if the size of his opponent, her reputation, and the weight of the challenge meant nothing to him. The crowd erupted again after he was gone, voices clashing with excitement and disbelief. Bets were placed, rumors began to spread, and the city buzzed with talk of the human challenger. Some called him a fool. Others wondered if there was more to him than met the eye. That night, while the alien princess returned to her training hall, Adrian walked alone through the quiet streets of Zyrella's lower district. The metallic buildings glimmered under the dim light of the moons. He stopped in front of a small market stall, buying a bottle of water from a vendor who looked at him with pity. "You're the human from the arena," the vendor said. "Everyone's saying you're going to lose." Adrian gave a faint smile. "Everyone's probably right, but we'll see." The vendor shook his head, muttering something about strange humans as Adrian continued on his way. Far above the city, in the royal palace, Sarika spoke with her advisors. "You cannot seriously fight this human," one of them said. "It's beneath your status." "If he wants to face me, I will not refuse," Sarika replied firmly. "Let the galaxy see what happens when a human challenges a Zyrellan champion." She did not say it aloud, but part of her was curious. There had been something about the way he looked at her, not as an enemy to be crushed, not as a prize to be won, but as an opponent to be understood. When the night grew late, both warrior and human rested, their minds already on the duel to come. The challenge had been set, the crowd's attention captured. In the heart of the Zyrellan Empire, a story was about to begin, one that neither of them could have predicted. The sun had not yet risen, but the capital city of Zyrella was already awake. The duel between Princess Sarika and the human, Captain Adrian Cole, had become the talk of the Empire overnight. Merchants in the markets shouted wagers alongside their prices. Children reenacted imaginary battles in the streets, pretending to be the mighty princess or the mysterious human challenger. Inside the royal training hall, Sarika was already at work. The room was wide and bright, with polished black floors and walls covered in banners of past victories. The princess moved with sharp precision, her spear slicing through the air in swift arcs. She struck wooden dummies with bone-cracking force, her muscles working with disciplined control. Her old mentor, Master Veyran, watched silently from the corner. He was a veteran of countless battles, his scales dulled with age. Finally, he spoke. "You seem focused, Sarika. More than usual." She paused, spinning her spear before planting its butt on the floor. "The human interests me," she admitted. "Most would beg to avoid a fight with me." He accepted without hesitation. Either he is a fool or he knows something we do not. Veyran's brow furrowed. "Do not underestimate him. Humans are not the strongest, but they are resourceful. They have a way of surprising their enemies," Sarika smirked. "I will keep that in mind. But make no mistake, I will not lose." While Sarika trained in the palace, Adrian was in the Challenger's barracks, a simple, low-ceilinged building near the arena gates. The room smelled faintly of metal and dust. He sat at a narrow table staring at a small datapad in front of him. On its screen played recordings of Sarika's past fights. Dozens of matches, each ending the same way, her standing victorious while her opponent lay defeated on the ground. He replayed certain moments again and again, studying her movements. Adrian wasn't looking for weaknesses in her strength. He knew he could never match her power directly. Instead, he searched for patterns. The way her left foot always shifted slightly before she struck, the small pause she took when switching from offense to defense, the way her grip loosened in the middle of long exchanges. A fellow human soldier, Lieutenant Harris, leaned against the doorway. "You really think you can take her?" Harris asked, half amused. Adrian didn't look up. "I think I can last long enough to find my chance. That's all I need." Harris shook his head. "She's the pride of her people. You lose, they'll call it proof humans can't stand against them. You win." "If I win," Adrian said quietly, "then they'll have to rethink everything they believe about us." Back in the palace, Sarika's sparring partners were beginning to tire. She had gone through 6 in a row, each pushed to their limit. Still, she wasn't satisfied. During a short break, Her younger brother, Prince Calrin, stepped into the training hall. He was smaller than Sarika, but sharp-minded and known for his tactical skills. "Sister, why fight him at all?" Calrin asked. "If you defeat him, everyone will say it was expected. If you lose, then it will mean I deserve to lose," Sarika replied without hesitation. "I will not hide behind fear of what-ifs." Calrin studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You've already decided, haven't you?" "Yes," she said simply. That evening, the arena's central hall opened for public viewing, allowing citizens to see the challengers train. Adrian stepped inside, greeted by curious stares. Most of the onlookers were Zarellan warriors, each taller and stronger than him. Yet he didn't seem nervous. He warmed up by running slow drills with his combat staff, basic sweeps, quick strikes, short blocks. His movements were smooth, controlled, without wasted energy. Some in the crowd laughed at the simplicity of his training. Others noticed something different, the way he stayed balanced at all times, the way his eyes never left his imaginary opponent. A young Zarellan cadet approached him. "Why aren't you training harder? Do you think the princess will go easy?" "On you?" Adrian smiled faintly. "I'm not trying to be stronger than her. I'm trying to be smarter than her." The cadet frowned, clearly not understanding, but Adrian didn't explain further. He simply went back to his drills. As night fell, the city grew quiet, but the palace remained bright. In her private chambers, Sarika removed her armor piece by piece, setting it carefully on a rack. She gazed out the high balcony at the glowing lights of the city below. For the first time that day, she allowed herself to think not as a warrior, but as a woman curious about her opponent. What kind of man challenges someone with an undefeated record? What drives him? Pride, honor, or something else entirely? In the barracks, Adrian lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The sounds of the city faded in the distance. He thought about his home, Earth, far away among the stars. He remembered the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost. This duel wasn't just about him. It was about showing that humans, though smaller and weaker in many eyes, could stand their ground against anyone. By dawn, both warrior and human were ready. Sarika had honed her strikes, pushing her body to the peak of its strength. She told herself the human would fall quickly, but deep inside she knew this fight would not be ordinary. Adrian had memorized every detail of her style, every small habit she had shown in past matches. He didn't plan to meet her strength with strength. He planned to make her fight on his terms. In a few hours, the arena gates would open again, and the crowd would return. But for now, the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the clash between the pride of Zarella and the calm human who dared to accept her challenge. The morning sky over Zarella burned with the light of twin suns. From every street, every balcony, and every spaceport, people moved toward the great war arena. Its black stone walls rose like a fortress, towering above the city. The air was alive. With excitement, the sound of footsteps and voices blending into one restless hum. Inside, the arena floor had been prepared for the duel. The sand had been freshly raked, the barriers checked for safety, and the banners of both the Royal House and the Terran Defense Corps hung high for all to see. Thousands of spectators filled the stands, their voices shaking the air. The announcer's voice echoed through the great structure, calling for the challengers to prepare. In the waiting chambers beneath the arena, Adrian Cole stood alone. He wore the same plain combat suit he had worn the day before, light enough to allow fast movement. His combat staff was in his hand, the smooth grip worn from years of use. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, blocking out the distant roar of the crowd. Across the hall, in another chamber, Princess Sarika was fastening the final clasp of her silver and blue armor. Her spear gleamed in the light, sharp and ready. Two attendants stood nearby, but she barely heard them. Her mind was fixed on the fight ahead. When the gates opened, the noise of the crowd swelled like a wave. Sarika stepped into the arena first, tall and commanding. The crowd shouted her name, the sound like rolling thunder. She lifted her spear high, saluting her people, her sharp eyes scanning the stands before fixing on the opposite gate. Moments later, Adrian emerged. There was no grand gesture, no show of bravado. He simply walked forward with steady steps, his staff resting at his side, his gaze calm but unshakable. The cheers for Sarika shifted into a mix of curiosity and mockery for the human. Some shouted for him to turn back, others laughed at the idea that he could win. The announcer's voice boomed, "Champion of Xyrella, Princess Sarika of House Vera, Challenger, Captain Adrian Cole of the Terran Defense Corps." The rules were simple: fight until one could no longer continue or until one yielded. No killing, but serious injuries were expected. The signal horn blared. Sarika moved first. She crossed the distance between them in an instant, her spear striking in a fast, precise thrust aimed at Adrian's chest. But Adrian was already shifting. To the side, the tip of the weapon slicing past him harmlessly. He countered with a light strike of his staff toward her midsection. Not powerful, but quick enough to test her reaction. Sarika blocked it easily and pushed forward again, her spear spinning in a blur. The crowd roared with excitement. Most had expected the human to fall within seconds, but he was moving with speed and control, avoiding her strongest blows. He never stayed in one place for long, circling her, using the width of the arena to his advantage. Sarika narrowed her eyes. He was not attacking recklessly, nor was he retreating in fear. Each move seemed deliberate, as if he were waiting for something. She pressed harder, using her strength to drive him back. Her spear swept low, then high, forcing him to block with both hands. The impact vibrated through his arms, but he held his ground. The fight continued, the rhythm shifting between attack and defense. Sarika's strikes were powerful and elegant, each one carrying the weight of her training. Adrian's defense was precise, his staff always in the right place at the right time. For the first time in many matches, Sarika felt the heat of challenge. This human was not as strong as she was, but he was reading her moves, reacting with uncanny timing. The crowd began to change. The laughter had faded, replaced by sharp, eager voices. Some were now cheering for the human, impressed by his skill. Others shouted for Sarika to end it before he found a way to win. Adrian's eyes never left hers. Every small shift in her stance, every flicker of muscle, told him what was coming next. When she tried to feint, he didn't fall for it. When she attempted to corner him, he slipped away just enough to escape. Finally, Sarika decided to test his endurance. She launched into a rapid sequence of attacks: high, low, left, right, each blow strong enough to knock down an armored warrior. Adrian blocked and sidestepped, each movement costing him energy, but he refused to give ground. The clash of spear and staff rang through the arena. Sand kicked up under their feet. The audience could feel the tension rising with every exchange. Then, in the middle of her assault, Sarika saw something strange, the faintest smile on Adrian's face. She realized too late that he had been guiding her toward a certain position. She lunged forward, expecting to end the match, but Adrian spun to the side and hooked her spear with his staff, twisting it sharply. The weapon was pulled from her. Grasp, flying several feet before landing in the sand. Gasps exploded from the crowd. The undefeated princess had been disarmed. Sarika froze for half a second, shocked. No one had ever taken her weapon from her so cleanly. Adrian, breathing hard but steady, stepped back and held his staff in a neutral position. He did not strike her while she was unarmed. Instead, he pointed toward her fallen spear. "Pick it up," he said. The crowd murmured in surprise. This was not arrogance. It was respect. Sarika's eyes locked on his. She walked slowly to her weapon, picked it up, and gave the faintest nod. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in battle, genuine anticipation for what would happen next. The duel was far from over. The arena had fallen into an uneasy silence. The sound of Sarika's spear hitting the sand still echoed in the minds of every spectator. The undefeated princess, the pride of Xyrella, had been disarmed for the first time in her career. Sarika gripped her spear tightly after retrieving it, the polished shaft warm in her hands from the suns above. She spun it once, testing its balance, as if to remind herself it was still hers. Her amber eyes stayed locked on Adrian, who stood calmly across from her, his staff resting lightly in his grip. He had not pressed his advantage. That was unusual. Most opponents would have tried to end the fight the moment she was unarmed, but he had stepped back and given her space. The gesture unsettled her more than she expected. "Why didn't you finish it?" she asked, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Adrian's answer was simple. "Because I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to fight you." The words lingered in her mind, but she pushed them aside. The signal from the referee rang out, and they began again. This time, Sarika's attacks were faster, sharper. She no longer underestimated him. Every step, every strike was calculated to break through his defenses. She aimed not only for his body, but to wear down his stamina, forcing him to block in ways that would tire his arms. Adrian adapted quickly. He moved with the same quiet precision as before, his staff a constant shield between her spear and his body. But now he also began to push back, short, controlled strikes that disrupted her rhythm and forced her to adjust. The crowd was on edge. They had never seen a fight like this. Sarika's strength was legendary, but this human's timing and awareness made it seem as though he could see into the future. At one point, she thrust forward with a forceful strike, expecting to catch him off balance. Instead, he pivoted to the side, letting the spear pass by while stepping into her space. With a quick twist of his staff, he tapped the flat of her armor, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to mark a clean hit. Gasps rippled through the stands. It wasn't a decisive blow, but it was proof he could land one if he wished. Sarika's pulse quickened. She was used to dominating her matches, but now she was the one being tested. She realized that if she relied only on power, she might lose. That thought was both frustrating and strangely exciting. She changed tactics. Instead of attacking in straight lines, she began to move more unpredictably, shifting her stance mid-strike and forcing Adrian to guess where the next blow would land. Her spear swept in wide arcs, cutting through the air with speed. Adrian stayed, patient. He blocked what he could, evaded when he had to, and used small movements to conserve his energy. Every time she tried to corner him, he slipped just far enough to avoid being trapped. Minutes passed like this, the fight becoming a dance of speed and precision. Sweat dripped from Adrian's brow, and Sarika's breathing grew heavier. The suns above beat down on them both, turning the arena sand into shimmering heat. Then came the moment that changed everything. Sarika lunged in with a high strike, and Adrian lifted his staff to block. But instead of pulling back, she shifted her grip and twisted the spear downward, locking his weapon against her own. With a powerful push, she forced him back several steps. For the first time in the duel, Adrian stumbled. The crowd roared, sensing a possible turn in the tide. Sarika pressed forward, her spear darting toward him again. But before she could land the deciding strike, Adrian dropped low, rolling beneath her weapon. He came up behind her, staff raised, and then stopped, holding it just above her shoulder. The crowd froze. He could have landed a heavy blow, but once again, he didn't. Sarika turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Twice now you've had me. Twice you've let me go." "Why?" Adrian's voice was steady. "Because a victory means nothing if it's only because I caught you off guard. I want your best, not your mistake. For a heartbeat, They stood there, the sound of the crowd fading beneath the weight of their unspoken understanding. The fight resumed, but something had shifted. It was no longer just about winning. Both fighters were now fully engaged, testing not only each other's skill, but also their spirit. Sarika attacked with renewed intensity, her strikes flowing like water, yet carrying the force of a storm. Adrian matched her pace, his staff moving as an extension of his body, every motion precise and purposeful. The arena echoed with the sharp clack of weapons colliding. Sand swirled beneath their feet. The spectators leaned forward, caught between, cheering and holding their breath. Finally, after a long exchange, Sarika stepped back, lowering her spear slightly. Her chest rose and fell with deep breaths. Adrian stood across from her, equally winded, but his grip on the staff was still firm. A faint smile touched the princess's lips. "You've earned my respect, human." Adrian gave a small nod. "And you've earned mine." The crowd erupted at the exchange, sensing that something more than a duel was happening here. It wasn't just about pride or a challenge anymore. It was about two warriors recognizing the strength in each other. As the referee signaled for a short pause, both returned to their starting points. Neither spoke, but their eyes said enough. They were no longer just opponents. They were equals in the fight, and deep in the hearts of those watching, a new thought began to take root. Perhaps this human could do the impossible after all. The true deciding moment was still to come. The suns of Zirella hung high now, their heat soaking into the black stone walls of the arena. The air shimmered over the sand, but neither fighter noticed. All that existed for them was the space between their weapons, the sound of each other's breathing, and the steady rhythm of their battle. The pause ended, and the referee's hand cut through the air. Sarika struck first, her spear darting forward in a blur. Adrian blocked, the wood of his staff rattling under the force. She followed with a sweeping strike aimed low, trying to knock his legs out from under him. Adrian hopped back, letting the tip of her weapon pass inches from his boots. The crowd roared with every exchange. Some shouted for Sarika to end it, others cheered for Adrian to hold his ground. The tension was so sharp, it felt as if the entire city was holding its breath. Sarika began pressing harder, her strikes faster, her movements sharper. She was no longer holding anything back. This was her at her true peak. The warrior who had crushed every opponent before him. But Adrian didn't crumble. He absorbed each attack, letting her power pass by, stepping aside at the last moment, waiting for the opening he had been searching for since the duel began. Then, in a single heartbeat, it happened. Sarika lunged forward with her full weight, her spear aimed for his chest. Adrian spun to the side, his staff hooking just behind her wrist. Using her own momentum, he twisted and pulled, sending the spear clattering to the sand for the second time. Before she could react, he stepped in and placed the tip of his staff, lightly against her throat, not enough to harm, but clear enough for everyone to see. The arena went silent. Sarika froze, staring into his steady eyes. She could feel her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The human had won. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Adrian stepped back, lowering his staff. His breathing was heavy now, his chest rising and falling. The crowd, still in shock, slowly began to murmur. The referee's voice broke the stillness. "The match is over. Victory to Captain Adrian Cole of the Terran Defense Corps." The sound that followed was unlike anything the arena had heard before. It wasn't the usual celebration for a victory. It was a strange mix. Cheers from some, disbelief from others, and a deep, humming silence from those who couldn't understand what had just happened. Sarika bent down and picked up her spear. Her grip was firm, but her hands trembled slightly. She turned to face Adrian, her expression unreadable. "You have done what no one else could," she said quietly. Adrian gave a small nod. "It was an honor to fight you." For the first time in years, Sarika felt her pride and her heart pulling in the same direction. She had teased the crowd with her words. "I'll marry any human who can defeat me," never expecting such a man would exist. Now, standing before her, was the one who had earned that right. High in the stands, members of the royal council exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered that the promise had been a joke and didn't need to be honored. Others argued that the princess's word, once spoken before the empire, could not be taken back. The crowd began to chant, at first softly, then louder. "Honor the vow! Honor the vow!" Sarika looked around the arena, at her people, at the warriors who had trained under her, and at the human who had faced her without fear. Finally, she stepped forward. The noise fell away as she lifted her spear in one hand, then lowered it to her side. She removed a small crest from the clasp of her armor, the emblem of House Vera given only to those she trusted completely. She held it out to Adrian. "I keep my promises," she said, her voice clear and strong. "You are my equal in battle, and now, by my word, you are bound to me." The crowd erupted again, this time in a thunderous mix of cheers and astonished cries. Some still couldn't believe what they were seeing. The warrior princess of Zirella offering her trust, and more, to a human. Adrian accepted the crest with both hands. He didn't smile in triumph, nor did he bow in exaggerated respect. He simply looked her in the eyes and said, "Then I will stand with you, always." As they left the arena side by side, the noise of the crowd followed them through the corridors. The royal guard stood stiff as they passed, unsure how to react to this unexpected turn of events. In the quiet of the palace's private halls, Sarika finally let her composure soften. "You fought with skill," she said. "But more than that, you fought with restraint. You could have ended the fight earlier, yet you didn't. Why?" Adrian walked beside her, his steps slow. "Because this wasn't about proving I'm better. It was about proving humans can stand as equals, even to the strongest in the galaxy. That matters more than any single victory." Sarika studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. She respected strength, but she respected honor even more. And in Adrian, she had found both. That evening, the news spread like wildfire. Across the Zirella Empire, people spoke of the duel, some praising the human's courage, others questioning the wisdom of the princess's choice. On distant worlds, humans listened to the reports with pride. For them, this was more than a single fight. It was a statement that humanity could no longer be dismissed. In the royal dining hall, Sarika sat at the head of a long table. Adrian sat beside her, still wearing his plain combat suit, his staff leaning against the wall behind him. Neither said much during the meal, but the unspoken understanding between them was clear. Tomorrow, their new bond would be tested by politics, by tradition, and perhaps by new challenges. But for now, they had shared the sand of the arena, and that was enough. The morning after the duel, the capital of Zirella was still alive with excitement. The streets were filled with chatter, merchants retelling every detail of the fight, children pretending to be the human with the staff, and warriors debating whether Adrian's victory had been pure skill or an impossible stroke of luck. In the palace, the mood was more complicated. The royal council had gathered in the high chamber, their voices sharp with disagreement. "It is unwise," said Lord Riven, a tall counselor with dark silver scales. "Our traditions demand that the princess marry within our kind. This, human, will unsettle the noble houses." "Our traditions also demand that a royal's public vow be honored," countered Lady Ira, her tone calm but firm. "If the princess breaks her word, she will lose the trust of her people." At the head of the table, Princess Sarika listened without speaking. She had expected this resistance. The nobles were proud, and the idea of a human standing beside Their princess challenged everything they believed. Adrian sat quietly at her side, his hands folded. He didn't interrupt. This was her world, her council. But his presence alone seemed to make half the room uneasy. Finally, Sarika rose to her feet. Her voice cut through the arguments like a blade. "I will not break my word. Captain Adrian Cole stood in the arena against me, and he did what none of our warriors could. He is my equal. That is the only truth that matters." Her tone left. No space for reply. The council fell silent. Over the next few days, the palace began to adjust to its unusual new guest. Adrian was given quarters close to the princess's own, and though the servants treated him with formality, curiosity was never far from their eyes. Sarika and Adrian trained together in the mornings, sparring in the same arena where they had first met as opponents. Their fights were no longer about winning, but about sharpening each other's skill. Sarika taught him some of the Zirella spear forms, and in return, Adrian showed her the close-quarters techniques of the Terran Defense Corps. At first, their styles clashed, her sweeping power against his quick precision. But over time, they began to blend their movements in a way that felt natural. "You fight differently now," Sarika remarked one morning after a long bout. "So do you," Adrian replied, a small smile on his face. "We've been learning from each other." Beyond the palace walls, however, tension was growing. Not all Zirellans welcomed this new alliance. In the shadowed streets of the lower city, whispers spread of warriors who wanted to challenge Adrian again, not in the arena, but in ways less honorable. One evening, as Adrian walked alone toward the training hall, 3 armored figures stepped into his path. Their faces were hidden beneath battle helms, but their voices were hard and cold. "You got lucky in the arena, human," one said. "The princess belongs to our people, not to you." Adrian's grip tightened on his staff, but his voice stayed even. "If you think I'm unworthy, then face me in the open, where all can see." The warriors hesitated. A fight here, in the shadows, would bring them no honor. With a final glare, they stepped aside. Later, when Sarika heard of it, her eyes flashed with anger. "If anyone challenges you, they will do so under the laws of the arena," she said. "No one dishonors my word. Or you." Adrian nodded, appreciating her defense, but he also understood the reality. Earning the respect of one warrior was easy compared to earning the respect of an entire people. Weeks passed, and slowly, things began to change. Adrian's actions spoke louder than his title. He trained not only with Sarika, but with other warriors, offering advice without arrogance, listening as much as he taught. He joined the palace guard on patrols through the city, proving he was willing to work alongside them rather than stand above them. One day, a young Zirella cadet approached him in the training yard. "Captain," the cadet said, "I used to think humans were weak, but after seeing you fight the princess and train with us, I was wrong." Adrian's answer was simple. "Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes you just have to show it before others believe it." The galaxy, too, was watching. Reports of the duel had spread across star systems. On human worlds, the victory was celebrated as proof that humanity could stand among the galaxy's strongest. On other alien worlds, it sparked debate. Some seeing it as a sign of unity, others as a dangerous shift in power. For Sarika and Adrian, the politics mattered less than the bond they had built. In the quiet moments between duties, they spoke not of battles, but of their worlds, the forests of Zirella's northern provinces, the oceans of Earth, the different ways their peoples told stories and sang songs. One night, standing on the high balcony of the palace, Sarika looked out over the glowing lights of the city. "Do you regret stepping forward that day?" she asked. Adrian shook his head. "Not for a moment. That day changed everything, for me and maybe for both our worlds. She studied him for a moment, then allowed herself a rare, genuine smile. Then perhaps the galaxy needed you to win. Months later, their partnership was no longer questioned. When the Royal Guard marched, Adrian walked at Sarika's side. When Zyrella's enemies tested its borders, he stood on the front lines with her. Together, they became a symbol, not just of strength, but of the possibility that two very different worlds could fight side by side. And though the memory of the duel still echoed in the minds of those who had been there, the story had grown into something larger. They had started as opponents, they had become equals, and now they faced the galaxy together.